given that the World Heritage Convention is becoming very increasingly popular around the world, and the tendency may be, I don't know if that statistic is correct, to see larger nominations, larger landscapes, of the likes in Australia, these large regional mosaic clusters in South Africa, in Madagascar. Any reflections on the governance and essentially the graded populations that are living within World Heritage Sites, and whether there's a trend maybe for kind of greater need for these, the new sites having greater need maybe for these mechanisms?
Yeah, I think there are several aspects to this. One is, of course, as you say, we have had, if you look at the history of the convention, up to 15 years ago, it was one World Heritage Site, usually was one national park or one monument, or now we are talking about cultural landscapes, which are large sites with lots of people inside. We talk about serial sites where we have many components to a site. Certain sites now have 20, 30 components. We have transboundary sites. A lot of these new concepts on the World Heritage List are intellectually very interesting, but as you say, bring a lot of management challenges, because what is a quite straightforward concept of a management plan, site manager, and the site manager working with his constituency and his wider landscape, social and ecological wider landscape, becomes much more complex in some of these larger World Heritage Sites. So definitely that is an important issue which should be looked into. I think the other thing is that definitely challenges are also mounting, because pressures are mounting. Even if you look at we have a rising number of sites on the list of World Heritage Endangered. Some of these are linked to conflict issues, some of these are also linked to pressure on the resources, and sometimes also pressure on the resources by local communities. So I think we have to engage more in dialogue with these local communities and find ways to address these issues to avoid that we are going to lose World Heritage Sites in the near future. So yes, on the one hand, looking for better ways to engage local communities to manage these complex sites, especially if we're talking about cultural landscape, for example, where lots of people are living inside. I think it's a very important issue. And then also looking at how to address threats and getting into a partnership with local communities rather than in a relationship where we see each other as activists.
So this facilitated session, we will take questions and answers, and I think our final respondent will come in towards the end of the session. So the floor is open. If everybody wants to come out and sit the front. If you want to come in from the back. Okay, so you sit in the front. Ian? Oh, no, sorry, the light. Oh, okay. Just to emphasize the last point that he was mentioning about these mosaic sites, and the case we have in Madagascar, the compact is really one which exemplifies this patchwork relative governance types in the landscape, and in fact the role that civil society organizations and connectivity of different government recognized protected areas could play. Are there any questions arising?
Thank you so much for sharing your experiences. It was really inspiring and quite exciting to see these long-term initiatives that have been obviously quite successful in a number of places. And I'm not trying to bring it back to negative experiences, but I was just curious if you could share kind of your candid thoughts on any of the challenges, maybe in the initial stages of setting up the programs in each country, especially with some government agencies possibly, or if there were any of those kinds of challenges that you worked to overcome and how you managed to do that.
Always long list of challenges.
was the definition in Madagascar, the definition of traditional local communities. There was local traditional local communities which still very unique and very unity in the communities. But there was a practice with projects, with other projects, that when they come with money, with bringing grants, they say to local communities, you have to raise an association or a small group to become a grantee of grants, of projects. And that destroyed, in a large extent, some unity in local communities. Because when it comes to money, they don't have the same interest. And in terms of management, natural resource management, we need unity of all communities, because natural resources is our common heritage. And the challenges were to how to rebuild the unity of the communities, to have common objectives. And when we come to grants for livelihood, for food security, for economic interest, we had to come back to the whole communities and to see the interest of each social groups, women, fishers, agriculture, and it was a challenge.
Maybe we could ask Nelly, I know that when compacts started to lead, some of the fisher folk associations were opposed to the environmental heritage sites, some of them were actively against it. So in a sense what you presented with the stewardship is a very major turnaround from the situation 10 years ago. I know that in one of the examples I think of was the threats of fishing communities coming in Guatemala with ships and stuff. And so maybe you could comment on was it the no-take zone was moved away from the border, and some of those changes over 10 years ago.
Thank you for reminding me. Yes, really, and I think to follow up on the first response in regards to specific challenges from a local perspective, or being a recipient of some of the grants, for us and working along with the fishers, as Lance rightly mentioned, we've come a long way in terms of really building that stewardship, building the balance, to the importance of the sites. It wasn't an easy task, but one of the major, I think, challenges that we faced was, again, the organization of these groups, and how Compact was able to address that challenge. I think at the local level was working with, for example, our organization, local NGOs, not only building our capacity, but also building the capacity of these fishers themselves through the work with our NGOs. And that really, and it comes back to accountability, transparency of the finances, because while the funds go directly to these local groups for the fishers, the funds are channeled directly to fishers, to the tour guides, but they need to account for how those funds are being used. And so that's really how we play a critical role in executing the training, but also allowing them to account
was a recipient of a grant. Just to address the point that Guy was talking about mining and extracting industry, are there any lessons about the kind of the champion steward role in the Philippines? In terms of those bigger threats, can the civil society actually do anything?
Specific for the Philippines, there's so much challenges regarding constituency building among community people, and also there's no threat or pressure coming from the government. In fact, they are supportive as they are member of the local consultative body, and they are providing legal assistance, providing implementation as well. On the issue regarding mining, there is this province-wide threat in our province regarding extraction activities of mining companies. But what we do is to support the advocacy works of NGOs initiating activities to oppose mining operations, as we cannot support direct activities because our local sites are affected with mining operations. Overall, the local government in the province of Palawan and the city government is supportive for local plans.
I think the biggest challenge which local government since the beginning has is the feeling that it's really hard to integrate something like youth and also maybe local communities into an international process, into an international conference. And reflecting on local government, I see it, but also here in the last days, there were so many events where you could hear those voices, especially in the Just World Pavilion, where you could hear we should see more local communities in conferences like here. And here it's quite open, but when you then go to processes as a COP or as a UNESCO World Heritage Convention, there it's much harder to bring in new dimensions like youth and local communities strategically. You can do it, but you always have to have local energy and supporters and be punctually, like we do it with local Biodef, or this time the Russians have done it with the use model of the UNESCO World Heritage Committee. But on a strategic level, I think this is really challenging. This has to be tackled much more on the international level.
One question here, any others? Hello?
Thanks very much for all the presentations. I know all are hugely great initiative, and from a quick resonance, you see that I guess two interesting questions come to mind. One is that a lot of quick questions is about more confident public involved in eco-tourism. Tourism is obviously a key issue around World Heritage Sites. So one question I had is, are there any specific lessons learned from any of your experiences about the positive aspects of that, but also the negative aspects? We know that ecotourism isn't a cure-all. There are issues with the long-term financial sustainability of some of these initiatives. And the second question would be about engaging with local government, district council, district council, level authorities. Are there any positive examples of engagement, or have you run into challenges, obstacles?
Yes, in regards to the ecotourism, for us, in regards to the positive spin on that, really goes back to the resource users, where we've been able to successfully get fishers trained in these other activities. As I mentioned earlier, we were able to get them trained as dive masters, fly fishing guides, and so we've had a significant shift from fishing, where these communities were primarily fishing communities. And so now you have a major shift where now the major income earner is now tourism. And that has been positive. There is, though, an issue of carrying capacities. as you rightly said, that it isn't the answer, it isn't to all of our concerns, or all of our issues, but it is a part of it. And I think what's important here is that if you look at the critical success factor for those sites in particular, you would definitely need to look at population size, looking at the actual amount of guides that you can train. Because again, if you have over 1,000, you can't train everyone as guides naturally. So looking at diversifying what opportunities exist, but looking at the negative side of that, also something that lesson learned from our end was that fishers are fishers at heart. And even though you can provide alternatives, if the alternative isn't realistic, at the end of the day, when, for example, tourism, there's a decline in tourism, they will revert to fishing. And so looking at alternatives for them, or looking at different options, the options must be in line with their skill sets, and must be realistic, feasible at the end of the day.
Local government question was the second part of this question. Do you want to do?
When it comes to government, local government or national government, the situation is very nice for the local communities when there is no stake, I would say no interest or no other resources that interest the government or the other stakeholders. And there was a question on the resilience, and for this, the autonomy, the economic and institutional autonomy of the local communities, they build the resilience. But we see that there is no resilience when, for example, there is mining or big investment which come, and their local communities building their trust with local people cannot do anything when government, someone from the local or national government come and say, you have to use the natural resource with other objective, or when there is someone to say that the government needs this land or these resources, and this is a very big deal. And how we deal with that. That is why we are working so much on this matter of governance, that is to say, to create network of local communities so that they can negotiate their rights on the resources. And when someone comes, they have the right to say, no, it is our resources. And it is something to be pushed and to protect them.
Okay, well, looking at the clock, we have just over 5 minutes. We have our respondent, Tim Batman. I think I'll hand over to him now.
Thanks, Terence. I'll respond just to get to the first part of the workshop, which I'm really sorry about, although we've had the chance to hear hear something of contact, but I think you've really been able to, firstly explore detail in a more detailed way than we've managed in the other workshops here, and also hear from several of the projects which is great. And I guess so. I'm the director of the Heritage Program at IUCN, and Verena's part of my program. So I've learned a few things at this congress. One is that Verena's great at not only doing the work she does at the provider, but presenting it too. So good on you, Verena. But as far as contact is concerned, my reflection on it firstly is it's been the best kept secret.